Keeping track of your stuff. Welcome to another Techstination interview. I'm Fred Fishkin, and with us from Toronto-based BeWhere is Senior VP of Sales and Marketing, Brian Boychuk. Thanks for taking the time with us, Brian.
Thank you for having me.
Well, before we jump into what is brand new, give us a little background about BeWhere. BeWhere.
BeWhere is it's referred to as a mobile IoT company. So mobile IoT relates to cellular IoT, and specifically the flavor is low power 5G. So it's part of the 5G standard. They've created a low power version that can be used for things like asset tracking or connected sensors.
You've been working in the mobile Internet of Things space for quite a few years and have some pretty well-known customers and partners. Tell us about the kinds of products that you've come out with.
So with the advent of low power 5G, my background, I was a co-founder of a telematics company a couple of decades ago, and used to track the vehicles, which are considered powered. And with the advent of low power 5G, the idea of, we always got the question, can you track what's on the back of the vehicle? So that sort of non-powered asset tracking. So we've created some devices that work over it's the LTE-M networks or the NB-IoT networks, depending on where you are on the planet. And they're a bit disruptive in terms of the price points for the cost of the technology, and also the functionality, the low power aspect. As with everything in life, the better you can do on battery life, introduces some interesting use cases for applying it to tracking or connecting sensors, that sort of thing.
Now, a lot of folks, consumers and others are interested and have been buying these trackers for their key rings and other devices for a number of years now. Pretty popular, and it's been growing. Apple's gotten into the business now, and others as well. So tell us what the differences are. If we explain this to consumers, you're talking about a bit of a different animal.
Sure. Yeah, no. I mean, when people ask me about the IoT stuff, in general, it's just an obnoxiously large market. Just with the new technologies that have come, when we launched vehicle tracking, 20 plus years ago, we looked at 350 million vehicles in North America at the time, roughly. And if we could get a fraction of a percent of the market, we could feed the family with the company. The asset tracking piece, for example, and connected sensors is even larger. It's just orders of magnitude larger. Like, the market is just stupendously large. It's really, the form factor, the price points coming down to where you can start to do these kinds of things. Specifically with the low power IoT stuff, it's a wider area network. So, if a device is sent from Pittsburgh to Cleveland to Atlanta, you can track it, as opposed to some of the technologies they're pretty cool for tracking things within a range. They have to be within range of your phone, and there's plenty of applications for that. But there's also a large variety of applications that need that longer distance.
So tell us, so you've got something new coming to market that's a little different from what you've had before. You can show us and tell us.
Sure. So when we originally launched about 2018, the asset tracking was the easy piece for folks to wrap their mind around. And you got these, small devices, fit in the palm of your hand, a solar rechargeable for stuff that spends time outside, a battery powered version for stuff that doesn't spend much time outside. And this would report a couple times a day, 3 or 4 times a day. You set a timer report for tracking things like generators or even pallets, that sort of thing. And we basically took that concept, and like everything else in life, it moves towards miniaturization. So we took a device, that same device, and jammed it all into that little package you see there. We call that the B Mini. And it basically, we've reduced the battery footprint, but it's got all the functionality you see in this device, which includes temperature, humidity, barometric air pressure, an accelerometer. You can monitor light as well. And we've taken that and we've put it into here. We also have a Wi-Fi sniffer, so you can do indoor location. And these devices have a USB rechargeable, and they can have a battery life of roughly about 600 reports, we'll say. And so depending on how frequently you report, if it's once a day, if it's 10 times a day, if it's every 10 minutes, your battery life will will match that. So you have the ability as use case to, if you have a closed loop system, like say vaccines or something, you want a short trip within town, but you want to make sure they're at the right temperature and all that jazz. You can have that reporting every 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and it comes back. You plug it in, recharge it, and off you go. We've got folks looking at it for things like pet tracking. So develop a little collar to put on a pet, and same idea. Just a series of short walks, so you can turn the reporting way up. Or, if you want, we have other applications where they're just tracking works in progress for manufacturing sites, where 3 times a day is fine, and this thing will last a year, and then they'll at some point in the process they'll just plug it in, recharge it, and off it goes again.
I suppose people tracking is a possible application too. These packages and pets, and why not people?
Yeah, no, we've actually had some inquiries about that specifically. Folks in some of the homes, they like to let folks out, and for safety reasons they can bring this along with them as a part of a check-in, check-out process. And again, when they come back, you can plug it in. When they're out, you can have it report at whatever suitable frequency that works for the folks involved.
And this is using the 5G network?
Yeah, it's low power 5G. So, most of the stuff you hear on the news is about the screaming high speeds, but they recognized if they could drive down the complexity of the connection, they could drive down the chipset costs and the wireless costs for the Internet of Thing type applications. The millions of those types of applications. So that's what you're seeing is these great price points providing that functionality with low power 5G. It's LTE-M or NB-IoT, depending on where you are in the world.
We talked before about the numbers of different kinds of devices that are out there for tracking. What advantages do you feel you have over the many competitors in what you're doing?
So the low power 5G, I mean, it's disruptive from the power draw point of view. It provides you, much better battery performance over legacy technologies, and the price points have been improved. Having said that, the market for tracking is pretty large. It's obnoxiously large. There's all kinds of opportunities. So there's all kinds of use cases. So it's kind of a case of a rising tide lifts all ships. We think there's a pretty big market for these kinds of applications, and I don't even think we've turned over all the potential use cases, because every other day we're having a conversation with a group of folks about this, and they have a different use case that we'll discover in that meeting.
And these would typically be available through carriers, and this particular unit is coming to market pretty soon?
Yeah, so by the start of summer, we'll have our first production runs in for delivery and be on the market. We work through folks like T-Mobile, AT&T, and depending where you are on the planet, Bell up in Canada, and there's different parts of the planet. We'll work with different carriers, but it's just coming to market basically the beginning of July. So commercially.
And people wonder, okay, so this is going to connect to a cell phone network, so it's going to take a pretty big bite out of my budget. But I guess not necessarily. Tell me about it.
Yeah, no, it's as I mentioned, part of the disruption with the low power 5G is the reduced complexity of the connection. The data costs are way down. So from what what people are typically used to. So now we're sort of all of our discussions are negotiating under usually 500K or a meg, whereas most people are talking gigabytes and multiple gigabytes and that sort of thing. So that's where that market plays. And the price points in and around like a year with the hardware with a year of service is in and around the $100 price point. That to be announced here at the end of this month. I guess we're in June already, and it's designed for that. It's designed as a lower cost tracking system with pretty enhanced functionality. So it's an interesting convergence of the technology and the price points with some of these use cases.
So you're saying that getting the device and having a year of service could cost as little as $100 or so a month? I know carriers are going to set the prices here more than likely.
Yeah, let's say 100 and change for the first year, and after that, it's just once the hardware is paid for, it's just the service.
Really interesting. So where do you see this going? I mean, you've made it this small. What do you think is next on the horizon?
Oh God, there's lots of different things. I mean, a lot of the development gets driven by end user use cases. So some tweaking of that system. But as I mentioned, you take a device like this that we're using today, it's commercially and available in the market, and you shrink that. So maybe I have a little bit less battery on this, but if you marry the two, where does that go? There's interesting things coming along with things like blockchain and that sort of thing for some of the markets. The connected sensor side is looking pretty interesting as well. We've seen some pretty disruptive changes for things like monitoring, remote sensor monitoring, like think water pressure in water mains in cities. You've got, it's not a very nice environment to be trying to run the wires. So a non-powered asset would be a huge gain. And if you can get the frequent updates that we are able to provide at the price points we provide, it really is a game changer for some organizations. It's early going in that connected sensor market, so there's lots of interesting avenues ahead of us.
For more information, where's the best place for people to go?
Our website's pretty open there at BeWhere.com. There's some sections there you can request some information. We put a bunch of our stuff up there. We have LinkedIn and Facebook, that sort of thing. But yeah, the website's probably a good place to start.
And again, it's spelled BeWhere, BeWhere. Brian Boychuk, thank you so much for taking the time with us.
Thank you, Fred.